Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Studio 808. Today I want to dive into a song I recently uploaded titled Rain. I wrote and composed this song using Reason 12, and so I want to get under the hood with Reason here and show you some of the tricks that I employed to make this song come together. Ideally, you want to use headphones or studio monitors to watch this video so that you can hear subtle changes that I'm showing whenever I'm bypassing and re-enabling effects. Let me shrink my face down here a little bit. All right, cool. So being a rock track, I'm using drums, bass guitar, electric guitar, and my vocals. For the drums, I'm using the Reason drum kit. So what I did was I started with this big room drum preset. And I made some adjustments to it. Some of the main things that I did was I adjusted the overhead and the room volume here on the fader. I also adjusted, so if you go into like the kick, snare, tom, hi-hat, crash, all of these, I went in to these different sections and I adjusted the volume of each. And really importantly, this section called leakage, which I think is kind of a gross sounding word, makes me think of something else. We're going to call it bleed, mic bleed. I adjusted the amount of mic bleed. So for example, when the kick happens, how much of that kick are you hearing in the overhead mics and in the room mics? That's what this leakage section will determine. So I adjusted that for everything. Then I also ended up adding distortion, not guitar distortion. I'm using a tape distortion here. And that is really just to bring out more of the detail and frequency and warm up the sound. And then I'm compressing that to control the dynamics of how loud the drums get. So those three things together, the adjusting Reason drums settings with regards to the overhead and room mic and the different elements of how much they're feeding into the overhead and room mic. That's how I ultimately ended up shaping the sound. So let's listen to the drums a little bit and I'll kind of bypass some of these effects and let you hear how they make up what we're hearing. So we're going to jump here to the drum section. This is going to be the chorus. And let's hear a little bit of playback. So just the drums. All right, so let's hear that if I bypass the distortion and the compression here. So right off the bat, you can hear a big volume difference. The volume difference is not really what's important. What's important is the detail that's brought out by the distortion and the compression. What I'm going for here is I'm trying to take it from sounding like I'm in a room with the drums to sounding like the drums are right up in my face. So again, let's hear a little back and forth. So yeah, so you see I'm not having to employ anything too crazy. I'm just using tape distortion, which is basically saturation. Basically using saturation and compression. So yeah, that's basically how I did the drums. For the bass section, I recorded it direct input. So I plugged in my bass guitar into my audio interface. And now I'm running it through this effects chain that I've created. So let's take a look at what comprises this effects chain. I'm going to start by disabling everything. So here is the bass. And so the first effect here is going to be an EQ. And you can see I'm not doing a lot with it. All I'm doing is boosting in the high end. So very minor difference. You probably can't even hear it. It's just you actually hear it more when the other effects are enabled. Then you'll hear the difference that the EQ makes. So, and then the next thing I'm using is a gate, and all the gate is doing is saying when the bass is not playing or making a sound to just mute it altogether so that there's not any extra ground noise, basically. And then from there, it's going into a bass amp simulator. So here's how that affects the sound. So obviously big volume difference, but also all that presence in your face. It adds a lot there. And this bass amp, this is I'm pretty sure this is native to Reason. So I'm pretty sure if you have Reason 12, you have this. I think that's actually been there since like version 10 or 11. And then after it comes out of the bass amp, it's getting compressed, and then it's going into a phaser. So let's hear the compression. So that's gluing it, and then the phaser. So that's a big sound shaper there. So the phaser I'm using is made by Sound Toys. This is a third-party plugin. I have a bunch of their products because I really like their tools. I think they sound great and they're fun to interact with. So basically, yeah, using a phaser from Sound Tools. Doesn't have to be from Sound Tools. It's just that's what I'm employing in this case. But yeah, that's the effects chain there. So let's hear that again. If I bypass the whole thing and re-enable it. And I told you that you'd probably hear the difference with this EQ once the other effects are enabled. So let's hear that. So if I disable just the EQ, so a subtle difference still, but you could hear it more than when the other effects weren't present. So the guitar part is basically, you got your main guitar line, which I have separated onto left and right channel, and then you have a guitar solo. And then there's a bus that all these tracks are feeding into for final finishing touches. Let's hear how the guitar part sounds. So it goes like this. So let's look at what is making up that sound. On the guitar bus, there's actually nothing, so that's just being used as a track that these separate tracks get bussed into. The guitar L, so if we look at the effects chain here, so we got EQ, we got gate, we're not using the compressor, we're only using the gate here, and then it's getting compressed. And then it's feeding into a guitar amp, which is another stock Reason rack effect here. All of these are actually stock Reason plugins or rack extensions, except for the phaser here at the end. So anyway, so it goes into the guitar amp. From the guitar amp, it goes into a distortion, kind of the equivalent of your distortion pedal, and then goes into a phaser, which is equivalent of having a phaser pedal. That's how the left channel is being affected. The right channel is the same thing, but there's no distortion and there's a delay at the end of the chain. Basically, I add this delay to the right channel, and it's a very short delay, but what that does is it creates a small separation from what's happening here in the left channel, time-wise, and the more you extend that amount of time, the more separate these channels sound. So if you use just a little bit of it, it takes it from a sound which is panned left and right to, as it separates, it starts to sound wider. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, here, I'll show you that effect in real time. So we have the delay bypassed, and here's the sound. And now if I enable it, it got wider. Disable it again. Sounds closer to the center. It's panned left and right, but it's closer to the center. And then with the delay, So it's got a cool stereo effect. And then there's the guitar solo here. And you can see the guitar solo is made up of the same effects chain. The only difference is I added a multi-band compressor at the very end, and that's just because I needed to compress the hell out of the guitar solo to really glue it and make it right there up in front of the focal point of the mix during the time when it's playing. So that's it as far as the guitar section goes. All right. So then you have your vocal section. And the vocals, so you got like your intro, you got your chorus vocals, you got these vocals happening in the middle, kind of the bridge of the song, and then it all comes back together at the end. So these are kind of the final chorus vocals, and you got a couple of like harmony, extra kind of supporting layers there. So let's hear the vocals. Also, actually, real quick, let's take a look at kind of the vocal chain. So we'll start here with this introduction vocal, and you'll see I got an L and an R, and those are separate recordings. That is me layering my voice. So if we started with just this beginning vocal.
I wish that I could believe in the stories, they got a lot to say. I really try, but they're just so boring. I'd rather put my head in a guillotine.
Here's the double.
And let the knife just fall. You can eat the remains. I know you want to get back to your stories. Turn on the TV for some ketamine.
So yeah, the vocal chain. You can ignore this combinator. I wish that I should have just deleted that, but Reason added it automatically, and I just moved forward. So anyway, the combinator is not doing anything, even though it's present. What's really happening starts here with the dynamic strip. So basically, at the beginning of the signal, the vocal's getting compressed, and it's running through a gate. And then it's going to a multi-band compressor, which is really shaping the sound of the mic. And then that is getting tweaked with another EQ where I'm cutting a little bit in the low-mid frequencies to take out some of the mud of the voice. And then that whole signal is getting compressed again. And then it looks like it's running to a Neptune auto-tune here. But this is bypassed. I probably could just as well delete it. It's just still there in the chain for whatever reason. I guess I was just being sloppy and not cleaning up as I went along to the extent that I should. And then this is running to a gate again. And then it's going to a reverb. And then it's going to a delay, but again, you can see this delay is bypassed, so I'm actually not using that. That's just taking up processing power. I should have deleted it. And then it's getting compressed again. So this chain, while it works, is maybe not efficient. I'm kind of showing how sloppy some of my work was there, but regardless, it gives me the sound that I was looking for, even if there are plugins there that I could probably just go ahead and delete. Let's hear the vocals without any effects. Oh my God, it's gonna sound like crap.
I wish that I could believe in the stories, they've got a lot to say. I really try, but they're just so boring. I'd rather put my head in a guillotine.
And with the effects?
And let the knife just fall. You can eat the remains. I know you want to get back to your stories.
So one thing you can definitely hear is when I had the effects bypassed, you can hear the sound from my headphones of the playback when I'm recording. So like when I stop singing, if you listen, you can hear the music.
I wish that I could believe in the stories, they've got a lot to say. I really try, but they're just so boring. I'd rather put my head in a guillotine. And
you can really hear the drums there a little bit and the kind of bleeding into the mic. So whenever I enable these effects, the reason you don't hear that anymore is because of the gate. Gate is so important on vocals. Gate's important in many places, but like you really need gate on your vocals to get rid of the background noises and room reverbs and things like that. And then, so basically it's more or less the same for all these other different vocal parts. And then at the end, all these vocals get fed into one vocal bus where I'm using this multi-band compressor to, again, really compress and glue all the sounds together. So let's hear just this vocal section, and we'll kind of listen to it with, I'll bring in the drums, the bass, and the other elements here.
Nothing that I've seen here has changed the way I feel. There's nothing here to hold on to. There's nothing here to steal. 'Cause all that's fake right now is gonna blow away with the clouds. Yeah, it's gonna wash away when the rain comes down.
One thing I haven't touched yet is the effects that I have on the master chain. And one thing that's really important that I'm doing in the master chain is you'll see there is a phaser on the master chain. So there's phasers on the bass and on the guitar, but there's also a separate phaser that's on the master chain. And the reason that is because that's how I'm creating that really big phasing, sweeping effect that's happening during climactic parts of the song. So you're just getting drenched in phaser. So I think it has a cool psychedelic sound. I might have been imitating, or I shouldn't say imitating. I might have been emulating Tame Impala a little bit, maybe just a little bit. The song doesn't sound like a Tame Impala sound, but if you listen to that big sweeping effect sound, maybe I was listening to a little Tame Impala there, and taking a cue. So anyway, so yeah, let's hear a little more playback.
The start gun is a shotgun blast. You like to prance around in your plastic pants. You're gonna do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. Technicolor, technocrat, crack kid, circuit bent brain holding up cash, going warp speed forward, forgot the past. In a smooth echo chamber with the seats rolled back, and everybody wants to tell you what's going around their mind. The glitch is like a window, you can see what's inside.
All right, so we also haven't taken a look here at the fader view. So I am doing some adjustments on the EQ of the faders, and what I've really started to do is, you'll notice that in most of my tracks, I already have an EQ strip there. So I try to shape everything. I try to not touch these faders until the very end. I try to use my effects chains to really shape the sound and get it as close, that I can. And then when I'm doing final touches, since these EQs occur at the very end of the effects chain, these are kind of like my last, this is where I can put my final touches. Like if it's not something that I want to correct within the effects chain of what comprises the sound, then I can use the EQ here and the low pass and high pass filters to do my last kind of, last polishing touches, the last layer of adjustments that I'll do. So yeah, that's really, that's an overview of the song and what I did to compose it within reason and my different effects chains. Maybe I'll talk a second about what this song means and how I composed it and how it came together. So this song is a critique of consumerism, of social media, really more so like echo chambers and human bias and what the things that we listen to that reinforce and make up our worldview. So let me pull up the lyrics here. Where do I got them lyrics? When I was originally composing this song, I didn't know what this song was going to be about. It really started with me jamming on some guitar lines and having, I don't know, just something kind of groovy. And what I ended up doing was just improvising lyrics. And so a lot of times I'm just kind of saying the first thing that rolls off my mind. It might make sense. It might not. It might not even be words. It might be just pure gibberish. But by allowing myself to not be restricted in what comes out of my mouth, I can just spit off kind of what naturally arises in my mind. And I can then, I can record that, play it back and look at it and then say, oh, this was interesting. This wasn't interesting. Oh, I liked how this word that I improvised, felt over this section. And whenever something kind of grabs me, usually it's like a lyric or something that naturally pops up and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I kind of like that idea. And I'll just kind of take it in that direction. So it can kind of start off with nonsense and I can get the feeling out first. And then I can, after the fact, begin to derive what the meaning is and reshape the words around it. So I think what initially stuck from my improvising was around the chorus, where I think the line I improvised was, all you fake right now is gonna blah, 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 blah. And so I grabbed onto that line, and instead of saying all you fake right now, I changed it to all that's fake right now. And then the next thought that I had after that was that it's going to blow away with the clouds. And so then all of a sudden, like, that was something I could grab onto. I was like, oh, okay. So it's all that's fake right now is going to blow away with the clouds. Well, then it's going to wash away when the rain comes down. Those things kind of just naturally arose from each other. And then the meaning came out of that of like, okay, so like, what does that mean? And so then I turned my sights to saying, oh, well, this could be a critique of culture and consumerism and kind of all the things around me that I feel are superficial or fake or just very shallow in their ultimate in their value or meaning. So that had me thinking about, all right, well, what are those kind of cultural myths and such? And so that turned my eye towards consumerism and kind of, I didn't explicitly make it about religion, but when I'm saying the lines, I wish that I could believe in the stories. They've got a lot to say. I really tried, but they're just so boring, and I'd rather put my head in a guillotine. That's like flashbacks to me being a kid at church and like listening to these stories and being like, I really want to believe in this. Like, you seem to have so much to say, but this is so boring and disconnected from my experience in life. And, rather than sit here, I'd rather be dead than to have to like listen to this, my whole life. So, but I didn't explicitly, that's maybe kind of where it was coming from internally. I didn't make the lyrics about that explicitly. For me, the way these words ultimately come across is those stories can apply to anything. It can be the religious myths. It can be the myths that are pushed on people for political reasons and just all the garbage and false information and fear mongering and alarmism that is pushed in media, like whether it's mainstream media or social media or even alternative media, just all of it. nothing that I've seen here has changed the way I feel. There's nothing here to hold on to. There's nothing here to still. That was very much really close to what I had just improvised, and so it kind of fit. Again, I really kind of developed this first, and then I developed this, and then I found that those improvised lines kind of still fit between these two concepts. And so when it gets to the middle of the song, this was like, this wasn't improvised. I mean, to some extent, I did do some improv, but like this was like a totally different section. This was like me pulling out the pen and pad and playing with words. The Technicolor technocrat crack kid is something is a line from a song that never came to fruition that I wrote like I don't know, back in like 2007. It just all of a sudden came back around, and I love the way that it felt, that it fit, rhythmically. And again, all of a sudden, Technicolor technocrat crack kid is like is what encompasses, it's what encompasses the mindless consumer image that I was trying to critique and get across. I don't know. From there, it was just, I was just having fun. So like I said, a lot of this it's a mix of improv so that I'm just free to express the sounds and the rhythms and the vocal cadence and all that. And then after the fact, I can listen back and begin to apply meaning and begin to make the lyrics make sense and put it all into a context. So that's a little walkthrough on how the lyrics came together. So yeah, that's Rain. That's how this song was composed in Reason. That's where the lyrics and all that came from. I hope you like the track. I hope you like the song. If you want to download it, free download over on SoundCloud. Check the description for the link and pop over there, download it, add it to your audio library. So yeah, so I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe because I have a lot more content that I'm trying to churn out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this was helpful. If there was something that you wanted me to go over that I skipped over, just leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the song. And you guys are great. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll see you again in the next one.